The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, red liquid spreading like blood across white stone. Sarah froze as her ex-husband Marcus grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising, familiar. "Everyone," he announced to the crowd of investors, his voice dripping with mockery. "Meet Sarah. She used to be my wife. Now she's my housekeeper. Isn't that where she always belonged?" Laughter erupted around them. Sarah's face burned as Marcus tightened his grip, showing her off like a trophy of his success. "She cleans toilets now," he continued, his new wife Vanessa giggling beside him. "It's amazing how life puts people exactly where people deserve to be." The laughter died instantly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees as footsteps echoed across the floor. Slow, deliberate, deadly. Sarah looked up to see him cutting through the crowd like a knife through silk. Choi Tae-yoon. 6 feet of controlled violence wrapped in a $10,000 suit. The man's soul's underworld called the Reaper. And he was walking straight toward her ex-husband. "You have 3 seconds, Tae-yoon said, his voice soft, almost gentle. But his eyes were black ice. "To remove your hand from my wife." Marcus's face went white. Your wife?" Tae-yoon didn't repeat himself. He simply looked at Marcus's hand on Sarah's wrist, then back at Marcus's face. The promise in that look was clear. "Touch her again, and you won't have hands to touch anything ever again." "I didn't know," Marcus stammered, releasing Sarah and stumbling backward. "She never said she was married to you. She shouldn't have to." Tae-yoon pulled Sarah against him, his arm wrapping around her waist possessively. The ring on her finger should have been enough. The fact that she's breathing should have been enough. He tilted his head. "But since you need things spelled out, let me be very clear." His next words made every person in that room take a step back. "You just put your hands on the one person in this world I would burn entire cities for. So tell me, Marcus." Tae-yoon's smile was terrifying. "How much is your life worth to you? Now before I tell you what happened next, you need to hit that subscribe button, because what Tae-yoon does to this man, you're not going to believe it. And trust me, Sarah's revenge is only just beginning." Drop a comment right now predicting what you think happens next. Does Marcus survive the night? Let's get into the story. Sarah had learned to recognize the signs of Tae-yoon's anger. The way his jaw tensed. The way his breathing slowed. The way his voice dropped to that deadly whisper that made grown men weep. But this was different. This was something colder. Something final. Marcus must have sensed it too, because he raised both hands in surrender, his expensive watch catching the light. "Look, I apologize. I had no idea that this was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." Tae-yoon repeated the word like it tasted foul. "You grab my wife. You humiliate her in front of a room full of people. You call her a housekeeper. And you think the word misunderstanding covers that?" Vanessa, Marcus's new wife, finally found her voice. She stepped forward, her designer heels clicking against the floor. "This is ridiculous." Sarah was nobody when Marcus left her. A struggling artist living in a cramped apartment. She should be grateful he even acknowledges her existence now. The room went silent. Even Marcus looked horrified at what his wife had just said. Sarah felt Tae-yoon's arm tighten around her waist, felt the barely controlled rage radiating from his body. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady despite the violence simmering beneath his skin. "Tae-yoon," she said softly. "She's not worth it." He looked down at her, his expression softening just slightly. "For you, I'll show mercy." Then he turned back to Marcus and Vanessa. "But mercy has conditions. You have 48 hours to leave Seoul. Sell your business. Cancel your contracts. Disappear. Because if I see either of you in my city after that, what happens next won't be a conversation." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but one of Tae-yoon's men appeared at his shoulder. A tall man with cold eyes and a scar running down his cheek. The kind of man whose presence alone was a threat. "I'd listen if I were you," the man said quietly. "The boss doesn't make offers twice." They left. Marcus practically dragging Vanessa toward the exit as the crowd parted for them like water. Sarah watched them go, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and something else. Something that felt almost like pity. Almost. The other guests began to disperse, the party's energy shattered beyond repair. Within minutes, Sarah and Tae-yoon were alone in the massive penthouse suite, the city lights of Seoul glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Are you all right?" Tae-yoon asked, his thumb tracing circles on her hip. His touch was gentle now, all the violence tucked away behind layers of control. Sarah leaned into him, breathing in his scent. Expensive cologne and something darker, something uniquely him. "I'm fine. I just wasn't expecting to see him tonight. I thought Marcus was still in New York. He came for the investment summit." Tae-yoon's voice hardened. "He's been trying to break into the Asian market for months. Every door he knocked on, I made sure stayed closed." He turned Sarah to face him, his hands cupping her face. "I should have warned you he was in the city. I should have made sure you never had to see him again. You can't protect me from everything." Sarah smiled, though her hands were still trembling slightly. "And I don't want you to. I'm not made of glass, Tae-yoon. I won't shatter." "No." His eyes roamed her face, drinking her in like she was something precious, something sacred. "You're made of steel wrapped in silk. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. But that doesn't mean I won't destroy anyone who tries to hurt you. If you're loving this protective energy, hit that like button right now. And stick around because you need to hear how these two met. It's not what you think." The story of how Sarah met Choi Tae-yoon wasn't a fairy tale. It was darker than that. More complicated. It started 6 months after her divorce from Marcus, when Sarah was living in a tiny apartment in Itaewon, teaching English to Korean businessmen and painting in her spare time. She had come to Seoul to escape, to rebuild, to become someone new. Marcus had taken everything in the divorce. The house, the savings, even her confidence. He'd left her with nothing but a plane ticket and the crushing weight of failure. One night, Sarah was walking home from a late class when she noticed she was being followed. 3 men, drunk or high or both. They called out to her in slurred Korean, their intentions clear even through the language barrier. Sarah quickened her pace, her heart hammering against her ribs. She turned down an alley, hoping to lose them, only to realize too late that it was a dead end. The men cornered her, their laughter echoing off the brick walls. Sarah's hand closed around the pepper spray in her purse, but before she could use it, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Leave." The single word carried enough weight to stop the men in their tracks. Tae-yoon stepped into the dim light, and even then, even before Sarah knew who he was, she could feel the danger rolling off him in waves. The men took one look at him and ran. Just like that. No argument. No bravado. They simply disappeared into the night like smoke. "Are you hurt?" Tae-yoon asked, his eyes scanning her for injuries. His Korean was perfect, but when Sarah responded in English, explaining she didn't speak much Korean yet, he switched languages seamlessly. "American?" Sarah nodded, still catching her breath. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." He said it like it was obvious, like there was no other choice he could have made. "Let me walk you home. This neighborhood isn't safe at night." Sarah should have said no. Every instinct should have warned her that this man was dangerous in ways those drunk men could never be. But instead, she said yes. They walked through the neon-lit streets of Itaewon, and Tae-yoon asked her questions. Why she came to Seoul, what she did, where she was from. Sarah found herself answering honestly, something about his presence making her feel safe despite all evidence to the contrary. When they reached her building, Tae-yoon handed her a business card. "If anyone bothers you again, call this number. Day or night. I'll handle it." Sarah looked at the card. It was black with silver lettering. Just a phone number. No name. No company. "Who are you?" she asked. Tae-yoon smiled, and it was the first time she'd seen anything other than cold calculation in his eyes. "Someone who would like to see you again. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. Moonlight Coffee. Meet me there tomorrow at 7. That should have been the end of it. Sarah should have thrown the card away and forgotten about the dangerous stranger who'd saved her. But she didn't. She went to the cafe the next evening, and Tae-yoon was there, waiting. They talked for hours. About art and philosophy and what it meant to start over. He never told her what he did for a living, and she never asked. All she knew was that when she was with him, the broken pieces of herself felt like they might fit back together. It wasn't until their 5th date that Sarah learned the truth. They were at a restaurant in Gangnam, and a man approached their table. He bowed deeply to Tae-yoon, speaking rapid Korean that Sarah couldn't follow. But she caught one word. Hyungnim. Boss. The man's fear was palpable, and when he left, Sarah finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. What do you do, Tae-yoon? He could have lied. He could have deflected. Instead, he looked her in the eyes and told her the truth. I run an organization. Some people call it a crime family. Others call it a necessary evil. I control territory, businesses, people. I'm not a good man, Sarah. I've done things that would make you run for me if you knew the details. Sarah should have run. She should have walked out of that restaurant and never looked back. But she didn't. Instead, she asked him one question. Have you ever hurt someone who didn't deserve it? No. His answer was immediate, unflinching. Never. I have rules. Lines I don't cross. The people I hurt are people who prey on the weak, who traffic in human misery, who think power gives them the right to destroy others. He reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not asking you to accept this. I'm not asking you to be okay with what I am. But I needed you to know before this went any further. And here's the thing that Sarah would never forget about that moment. Tae-yoon wasn't trying to justify himself. He wasn't making excuses or painting himself as some kind of antihero. He was simply giving her the truth and letting her decide what to do with it. She could have left. Part of her wanted to. But a larger part, the part that had been broken and discarded by Marcus, saw something in Tae-yoon that she'd never seen before. Honesty. Raw, unflinching honesty. I need time, she'd said. To think about this. To figure out what it means. Take all the time you need. Tae-yoon had released her hand, that iron control back in place. But know this. Whatever you decide, you're under my protection now. No one will touch you in this city. No one will hurt you. That's not conditional on whether you choose me or not. Now if you're wondering how she went from that conversation to marrying him, keep watching. Because what happens next changes everything. Sarah took a week to think. She researched Choi Tae-yoon, or at least tried to. Information about him was scarce, buried under layers of corporate fronts and legal businesses. But the whispers she found told a story. The Reaper. The Dragon of Seoul. The man who'd unified the city's underworld through a combination of strategic brilliance and ruthless efficiency. He was feared, yes, but also respected. His territory had the lowest rates of human trafficking and drug abuse in the city. He ran protection rackets, but the businesses he protected actually stayed safe. He was a criminal, but he operated by a code. And more than that, Sarah remembered how he'd looked at her. Not with the possessive entitlement Marcus had shown, but with something deeper. Like she was a person, not a possession. Like her choice mattered. So she called him. Met him at the same cafe where they'd had their first date. And she told him she wanted to try. To see where this could go. Tae-yoon's relief had been palpable, though he'd hidden it quickly behind his usual mask of control. Their relationship moved slowly at first. Tae-yoon was careful with her, always making sure she was comfortable, always giving her space to adjust to his world. He introduced her to his inner circle. Men with hard eyes and harder histories who treated her with unexpected respect. He showed her the legitimate businesses he ran. The restaurants and real estate holdings and import companies that formed the public face of his empire. And gradually, Sarah began to understand. Tae-yoon wasn't a monster. He was a man who'd grown up in a world where strength was the only currency that mattered, and he learned to be stronger than everyone else. 3 months into their relationship, everything changed. Sarah was at her apartment, working on a painting when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. The voice on the other end was cold, clinical. Miss Sarah Williams. You've been seeing Choi Tae-yoon. That's a mistake. End the relationship, or we'll end it for you. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? Someone who's giving you a chance to walk away. The line went dead. Sarah sat there, staring at her phone, fear and anger warring inside her. She should have been terrified. She should have packed her bags and run. Instead, she called Tae-yoon. He arrived at her apartment within 15 minutes, his face a mask of cold fury when she told him about the call. He made a single phone call, speaking in rapid Korean, and then he turned to Sarah. "Pack a bag. You're coming to stay with me until this is resolved." "I'm not running," Sarah said, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "I'm not letting some anonymous coward dictate my life." Tae-yoon studied her for a long moment, and then something shifted in his expression. Something that looked like pride. "Then we do this together. But you need to trust me, Sarah. Completely. Can you do that?" Sarah looked at this man who'd shown her more genuine care in 3 months than Marcus had in 3 years of marriage. "Yes, I trust you." What followed was a week of tension. Tae-yoon moved Sarah into his penthouse, surrounding her with security. His men tracked the phone call, followed leads, dug through layers of deception. And finally, they found the source. A rival organization trying to weaken Tae-yoon by targeting the one thing they thought would hurt him. His relationship with Sarah. It was a miscalculation. A fatal one. Tae-yoon didn't just eliminate the threat. He dismantled the entire operation, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a warning to anyone else who might think about coming after what was his. And that's when Sarah knew. This wasn't just a relationship. This was something deeper, something that transcended normal definitions. Tae-yoon wasn't just protecting her. He was claiming her. And the terrifying part? She wanted to be claimed. After the threat was eliminated, Tae-yoon took Sarah to a private room in one of his restaurants. He poured them both wine, and then he did something that surprised her. He got down on one knee. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I know this is fast. I know my world is dangerous and complicated. But I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You make me want to be better. To build something that isn't just about power and control. Marry me. Not because you need my protection, but because you want to build a life with me." Sarah's breath caught. "Tae-yoon, Before you answer, let me be clear about what you're agreeing to." He stood, taking her hands. "If you marry me, you become part of my world completely. There will be dangers. There will be people who resent you, who see you as a weakness to exploit. I can protect you from most threats, but I can't shield you from everything. And I need you to understand that once you're mine, I don't let go. I'm possessive, Sarah. Probably too possessive. I'll want to know where you are, who you're with, that you're safe. I'll struggle to give you space, because every instinct I have will be screaming at me to keep you close. So I need you to be sure. To really understand what you're signing up for. Comment below right now. Would you marry him? Would you dive into this dangerous world for love? Let me know." Sarah looked at this man who was offering her everything and demanding nothing but her truth in return. Most men would have hidden their flaws, pretended to be something they weren't. But Tae-yoon was giving her the raw reality and letting her choose with full knowledge. And in that moment, Sarah realized something. She'd spent her entire marriage to Marcus trying to be smaller, quieter, less. Trying to fit into the box he'd made for her. And she'd still ended up discarded, humiliated, destroyed. Tae-yoon was offering her the opposite. A chance to be fully herself, fully seen, in all her messy, complicated humanity. Yes, there would be danger. Yes, his possessiveness might chafe sometimes. But it came from a place of genuine care, not control. It came from a man who saw her as precious, not disposable. "Yes," Sarah said, and watched Tae-yoon's face transform. "Yes, I'll marry you. I'll build this life with you. And I'll trust you to keep me safe while I learn to be strong enough to stand beside you." Tae-yoon pulled her into his arms, his kiss desperate and claiming. When they finally broke apart, he slid a ring onto her finger. A black diamond surrounded by smaller white stones. Unconventional, striking, perfect. They were married a month later in a private ceremony attended by only Tae-yoon's closest associates and Sarah's best friend who flew in from New York. It wasn't a traditional wedding. There were no white dresses or church bells. Sarah wore a deep red gown and Tae-yoon wore black, and they made their vows in both English and Korean. And when Tae-yoon kissed his bride, every man in that room understood. She was under his protection now. Untouchable. Sacred. That had been 8 months ago. 8 months of learning to navigate Tae-yoon's world. Of discovering that being married to a crime lord meant attending charity galas one night and watching him negotiate territorial disputes the next. Of realizing that the man who could order someone's death without blinking would spend hours listening to her talk about her art. Of understanding that possessiveness, when it came from the right place, could feel like the safest thing in the world. And now here they were, standing in his penthouse after Marcus had tried to humiliate her, and Sarah realized something. She didn't need Tae-yoon to fight her battles. But it meant everything that he wanted to. That he would burn the world down for her if she asked. Back in the present, Tae-yoon led Sarah to the couch, pulling her into his lap. His arms wrapped around her, solid and secure. "Tell me what you need," he murmured against her hair. "Do you want me to make them suffer? I can drag this out. Make Marcus wish he'd never spoken your name." "No," Sarah said, surprising herself. "I want them gone. Out of Seoul, out of our lives. I don't want to waste any more energy on them. Marcus took enough from me already. I won't give him another second of my peace." Tae-yoon pulled back to look at her, his eyes searching. "You're sure?" "Because the offer stands. I can make him pay for every moment of pain he caused you." "I know you can." Sarah cupped his face. "And I love that you would. But the best revenge isn't making him suffer. It's being happy. It's building this beautiful life with you and not looking back." She smiled. "Besides, losing his business opportunities in Asia? That's going to hurt him more than anything else you could do. Marcus's entire identity is wrapped up in being successful, being important. You've already taken that away." Tae-yoon's expression softened into something that looked almost like wonder. "How did I get this lucky? To find someone who sees the world the way you do?" "You saved me from muggers in an alley," Sarah reminded him. "That's not luck. That's fate." They sat there in comfortable silence for a while, Sarah's head on Tae-yoon's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. But eventually, reality intruded. Sarah's phone buzzed. She pulled it out to find a text from an unknown number. The message made her blood run cold. "You think you've won? You think marrying a criminal makes you special? You're still the same worthless woman I divorced. And I'm going to prove it." Sarah showed Tae-yoon the message. His expression went from soft to lethal in a heartbeat. He took her phone, forwarded the message to one of his men, and then looked at Sarah. "I gave him 48 hours. He just used up that grace period." "What happens now?" Sarah asked, though part of her already knew. "Now I show him why people call me the Reaper." Tae-yoon's voice was calm, almost conversational. But there was steel underneath. "He threatened you again. In writing. That's not just stupidity. That's suicidal. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to have a conversation with Marcus." Tae-yoon stood, gently moving Sarah off his lap. "And he's going to learn that there are consequences for threatening what's mine." He made a phone call, speaking in rapid Korean. Sarah caught enough to understand he was mobilizing his men, tracking Marcus's location. When he hung up, he turned back to her. "Stay here. I'll have security outside the door. I'll be back in a few hours." "No." Sarah stood as well. "I'm coming with you." Tae-yoon's eyes narrowed. "Sarah, this isn't going to be pretty. I'm not going to hurt him, but I am going to scare him." "You don't need to see that." "I want to see it," Sarah insisted. "I want Marcus to look me in the eyes and see that I'm not afraid anymore. That he has no power over me. And I want him to understand that threatening me means answering to you." Tae-yoon studied her for a long moment, and then he nodded. "All right. But you stay behind me. If things escalate, you leave immediately. Understood?" "Understood." They found Marcus at his hotel. The Grand Hyatt, because of course Marcus would choose the most expensive place in Seoul. Tae-yoon's men had already secured the floor, ensuring there would be no witnesses, no interruptions. They walked down the hallway, Sarah's heels clicking against the carpet, Tae-yoon's presence like a storm about to break. When they reached Marcus's suite, Tae-yoon didn't knock. One of his men simply opened the door with a key card they'd acquired. Security at the Grand Hyatt was very accommodating when the Reaper made requests. Marcus was on the phone, pacing in front of the window. He turned when they entered, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and then terror. "I'll call you back," he said quickly, ending the call. "What are you doing here?" You can't just break into my room. I can do whatever I want. Tae-yoon's voice was soft, conversational. This is my city, Marcus. Every building, every business, every person. All of it exists because I allow it to exist. He moved further into the room, and Marcus backed up instinctively. You sent my wife a threatening text message. After I explicitly told you to leave Seoul. That shows either impressive bravery or terminal stupidity. Which is it? I was angry, Marcus stammered. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just words. Just words. Tae-yoon repeated. He pulled out his phone, showing Marcus the screenshot of the threatening text. You called my wife worthless. You threatened to prove something. That sounds like intent to me. Look, I apologize. Marcus raised his hands. I'll delete her number. I'll never contact her again. I'll leave Seoul tonight. Just please, I have a family. A wife. Please. Now he remembers Vanessa, Sarah thought. How convenient. Tae-yoon circled Marcus like a predator studying prey. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Seoul within the next 2 hours. Not 48 hours. Not tomorrow. Now. You're going to sell your Asian business interests at a loss, because no one in this part of the world will do business with you after tonight. And you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that you had a chance at mercy and you threw it away by sending that text. That's not fair, Marcus protested weakly. Fair? Tae-yoon's laugh was cold. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you divorced Sarah and left her with nothing? Was it fair when you humiliated her in front of a room full of people? Was it fair when you grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise? He stepped closer, and Marcus pressed back against the wall. I don't care about fair, Marcus. I care about protecting what's mine. And you've proven you're a threat. I'm not a threat, Marcus insisted. I'm nobody. I'm nothing compared to you. Exactly. Tae-yoon's voice dropped to a whisper. You're nothing. So act like it. Disappear. Live your small life somewhere far away from here. And pray I never think about you again, because if I do, if your name crosses my mind for any reason, I might decide that letting you live was a mistake I need to correct. If you're still watching, drop a like right now. You know you want to see how this ends. Marcus's face had gone pale, sweat beading on his forehead. I understand. I'll leave. I'll never come back. I'll never contact Sarah again. I swear. Good. Tae-yoon turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Marcus? One more thing. He looked back, his expression pleasant in a way that was somehow more terrifying than his anger. If I ever hear that you've laid hands on another woman the way you did with Sarah, I'll find out. And I'll come for you. Doesn't matter where you are. New York, London, Antarctica. I'll find you. And what happens then won't be a conversation. Do we understand each other? Marcus nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, we understand each other. They left Marcus's suite, Sarah's hand in Tae-yoon's. As they walked down the hallway, Sarah felt something shift inside her. A weight she'd been carrying for years, since the divorce, since the humiliation, since the moment Marcus had made her feel like she was nothing. It lifted. Just like that. Because she finally understood something fundamental. She wasn't nothing. She'd never been nothing. Marcus had tried to make her believe she was, had tried to diminish her until she fit into his narrow view of the world. But she'd survived. She'd rebuilt. She'd found someone who saw her for exactly who she was and loved her not despite her flaws, but because of her wholeness. In the car back to the penthouse, Tae-yoon kept Sarah's hand in his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Are you all right? He asked. Really all right? Sarah thought about it. About the girl she'd been when she'd married Marcus, so eager to please, so desperate to be enough. About the woman she'd become after the divorce, broken and rebuilding. And about who she was now, sitting beside a man who terrified others, but who touched her like she was made of something precious. I'm better than all right, she said finally. I'm free. Tae-yoon lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Good. Because I have something I need to tell you. Sarah's heart skipped. What is it? I'm getting out. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah turned to look at him, searching his face. Getting out of what? The life. The organization. Tae-yoon's expression was serious. I've been planning it for a while, even before I met you. But you accelerated the timeline. made me want it more. I want to be able to take you places without worrying about enemies. I want to have children with you someday without fearing they'll be used against me. I want to build something legitimate, something clean. Is that even possible? Sarah asked. Can someone just leave that world? Not easily. Tae-yoon admitted. It'll take time. I need to install the right people, ensure stability, make sure there's no power vacuum that'll lead to violence. But I've already started the process. Within a year, maybe 2, I'll be out completely. We can go anywhere you want. Paris, New York, back to the States if that's what you want. We can have a normal life. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You'd do that for me? I'd do it for us. He cupped her face. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, Sarah. A reason to want more than power and control. A reason to imagine a future that isn't just about surviving, but actually living. So yes, I'm getting out. And I'm building a life with you that doesn't require looking over our shoulder every moment. They spent that night tangled together, Tae-yoon worshipping Sarah's body with a reverence that made her feel like the most important person in the world. And maybe to him, she was. When they finally lay still, Sarah's head on his chest, she asked the question that had been nagging at her. What about your family? Your mother? Won't she object to you leaving? Tae-yoon's jaw tightened. My mother died when I was young. I was raised by my uncle, the previous head of the organization. He taught me everything about this life, but he also taught me that power without purpose is empty. He'd approve of my decision. As for the others, they'll adjust. I'm not abandoning them. I'm ensuring succession, setting up systems that'll keep everyone safe and profitable. They'll be fine. And if they're not fine, if someone challenges you, then I deal with it. Tae-yoon's voice was firm. But that's my problem, not yours. Your job is to keep being exactly who you are. Strong, brilliant, kind. Everything I'm not. You're more than you think, Sarah said softly. You're not just the Reaper. You're the man who saved me in an alley. Who told me the truth even when lies would have been easier. Who treats me like an equal even though you could demand obedience. You're a good man, Tae-yoon. Even if you don't see it. I see it because you showed me. The next few weeks passed in relative peace. Marcus disappeared from Seoul, his business ventures collapsing as Tae-yoon had promised. Vanessa filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, which Sarah suspected was code for he's broke now. Sarah returned to her art, preparing for a gallery showing that Tae-yoon had helped arrange. Not through intimidation or his connections, but by simply showing her work to a gallery owner who appreciated talent. The showing was a success, with several pieces selling for amounts that made Sarah's head spin. But more than the money, it was the validation. The proof that she had value beyond being someone's wife. Tae-yoon attended the showing, pride evident in his eyes as he watched people admire Sarah's work. He stayed close, but not smothering, letting her have her moment while making it clear to everyone there that she was under his protection. And when one particularly aggressive art collector tried to lowball Sarah on a piece, Tae-yoon simply appeared at her side, his presence enough to make the man reconsider and offer a fair price. That night, they celebrated at their penthouse. Tae-yoon had arranged for a private chef to prepare Sarah's favorite meal, and they ate by candlelight, talking about the future. About the house they'd buy once he was out of the organization. About traveling the world. About maybe someday having children who'd grow up safe and loved. I never thought I'd have this, Sarah admitted over wine. After Marcus, I thought I was broken. That I'd never trust anyone enough to try again. You're not broken. Tae-yoon reached across the table to take her hand. You're a survivor. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed. But survivors? We adapt. We overcome. We build something stronger from the pieces. That's what you did, Sarah. That's what we're doing together. 3 months later, everything changed again. Sarah was at the penthouse, working on a new painting when Tae-yoon came home early. His expression was tense, controlled in a way that immediately put her on alert. What's wrong? She asked, setting down her brush. We need to talk. Those 4 words sent ice through Sarah's veins. She'd learned that when Tae-yoon said they needed to talk, it meant something serious. Something dangerous. They sat on the couch, and Tae-yoon took both her hands in his. I've been working on my exit strategy, he began. setting up legitimate businesses, transferring power, cleaning house. But there's a problem. One of my former associates, a man named Park Jin-woo, isn't happy about the transition. He thinks I'm weak for wanting out. Thinks he should take over. Is he going to challenge you? More than that. Tae-yoon's jaw tightened. He's been making moves. Building alliances, positioning himself. And yesterday, I found out he's been asking questions about you. Where you go, who you see, what matters to you. Sarah's blood ran cold. He's going to come after me. To get to you. Tae-yoon's eyes blazed with fury barely held in check. He's going to try. But I'm not going to let that happen. I'm moving you somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't reach. No. Sarah pulled her hands free, standing up. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. We've been through this before, Tae-yoon. I'm not going to live my life in fear. This is different. Tae-yoon stood as well, his voice rising slightly. Jin-woo isn't some drunk man in an alley. He's not Marcus sending pathetic text messages. He's dangerous, Sarah. He's killed people. And he knows the best way to hurt me is through you. So what's your plan? Sarah challenged. Lock me away in some safe house while you handle this? How long, Tae-yoon? A week? A month? A year? When does it end? When he's no longer a threat. The finality in Tae-yoon's voice was absolute. I'll handle Jin-woo. Permanently. And then you can come home. And if something happens to you? Sarah's voice broke slightly. If you're so focused on protecting me that you make a mistake? That you get hurt? Then what? I lose you and I'm left knowing that I hid like a coward while you fought alone. You're not a coward. Tae-yoon moved toward her, but Sarah stepped back. You're the woman I love. The woman I'm trying to keep alive. By treating me like I'm helpless. Sarah shook her head. I understand you're scared. I'm scared too. But we're supposed to be partners, Tae-yoon. That means we face threats together, not with you shielding me from everything. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Finally, Tae-yoon ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. What do you want me to do, Sarah? Just let you walk around as a target? I want you to teach me. Sarah's voice was steady now. Teach me how to protect myself. Not just pepper spray and running away. Really protect myself. Give me the tools to survive in your world instead of just hiding from it. Tae-yoon looked at her for a long moment, conflict warring in his eyes. Then slowly he nodded. All right. But we do this my way. You train with my best people. You learn to shoot, to fight, to think like someone who's being hunted. And you don't leave this penthouse without security until Jin-woo is handled. Those are my terms. Deal. Sarah closed the distance between them, wrapping her arms around his waist. I know this is hard for you. Trusting me to be strong enough. But I need you to try. I do trust you. Tae-yoon held her close, his chin resting on top of her head. It's the rest of the world I don't trust. The training began the next day. Tae-yoon's head of security, a woman named Kim Min-ji, took Sarah through basic self-defense. Min-ji was compact, efficient, and utterly terrifying. She'd been with Tae-yoon for years, one of the few people he trusted completely. She's tougher than she looks, Min-ji said approvingly after their first session, speaking to Tae-yoon while Sarah caught her breath. She doesn't give up easily. Sarah also learned to shoot. Tae-yoon took her to a private range, teaching her how to handle a pistol with patience that surprised her. He was meticulous, correcting her stance and grip, praising her when she hit the target. By the end of the week, Sarah could field strip and reassemble the weapon with her eyes closed. But the most important training wasn't physical. It was mental. Min-ji taught Sarah how to read situations, how to identify threats, how to always know her exits. She learned to be aware of her surroundings, to trust her instincts, to never let her guard down completely. It was exhausting and empowering in equal measure. 2 weeks into the training, Jin-woo made his move. Sarah was returning from an art supply store, 2 of Tae-yoon's men flanking her, when a black van pulled up alongside them. The door slid open and gunfire erupted. Sarah hit the ground as her guards returned fire, their bodies shielding hers. The whole thing lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When the van sped away, one of her guards was wounded, blood seeping through his jacket. Sarah's hands shook as she helped apply pressure to the wound, her training kicking in even through the adrenaline and fear. The other guard was already on the phone, calling for backup and medical assistance. Tae-yoon arrived before the ambulance, his face a mask of cold fury. He checked Sarah for injuries first, his hands running over her arms, her face, her torso, making sure she was unharmed. Then he turned to his wounded man. "You did good," he said quietly. "Thank you for protecting her." The man nodded, his face pale but determined. "She's the boss's wife. Of course I protected her." At the hospital, after the wounded guard was stabilized, Tae-yoon pulled Sarah into a private room. His control was fracturing, emotion bleeding through the cracks. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said, his voice rough. "You could have died today. But I didn't." Sarah took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "Your men protected me. My training helped me stay calm. The system worked, Tae-yoon. I'm alive. This time." His hands gripped her waist, pulling her close. "Next time we might not be so lucky. Then we make sure there isn't a next time." Sarah's voice was steady. "You end this. You handle Jinwoo before he gets another chance. If you've made it this far, comment the word Reaper so I know you're still with me. And hit subscribe because this story is about to get intense." Tae-yoon's expression hardened into something Sarah had never seen before. Something absolutely lethal. "You're right. This ends now." He made a series of phone calls, mobilizing his entire organization. Within hours, every person loyal to Tae-yoon was hunting for Park Jinwoo. It took 3 days. 3 days of Sarah staying in the penthouse under heavy guard while Tae-yoon dismantled Jinwoo's operation piece by piece. He was methodical, brutal, efficient. Anyone who'd allied with Jinwoo found themselves facing consequences. Businesses shut down. Bank accounts frozen. Alliances shattered. Tae-yoon moved through Seoul like a force of nature, reminding everyone why he'd unified the underworld in the first place. On the third night, Tae-yoon came home covered in blood. Not his own. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom, and Sarah knew without asking. "It's done," he said simply. "Jinwoo? Gone. He won't threaten you again. He won't threaten anyone again." Sarah should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from the violence, from what Tae-yoon had done. But all she felt was relief. And maybe that made her as dark as him. Maybe loving someone like Tae-yoon meant accepting that sometimes violence was the answer. That sometimes protection required brutality. She walked to him, took his hand, and led him to the bathroom. She helped him out of his bloody clothes, started the shower, and washed the evidence of what he'd done down the drain. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. When he was clean, she dried him off and led him to bed. Tae-yoon pulled her close, his body finally relaxing for the first time in days. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this," he murmured. "You've seen me at my worst now." "No." Sarah traced patterns on his chest. "I've seen you protect what matters to you. There's a difference. You did what you had to do to keep us safe. I'm not going to judge you for that. Most people would. Most people aren't married to you." She tilted her head up to look at him. "I knew who you were when I said yes, Tae-yoon. I'm not going to pretend to be shocked when you act like it." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring everything he couldn't say into the connection between them. And Sarah kissed him back, accepting all of him, the darkness and the light, the violence and the tenderness. Because that was what love meant sometimes. Not accepting someone despite their flaws, but because of their wholeness. The next morning brought unexpected news. Minji arrived at the penthouse with a serious expression. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. Jinwoo had a brother. Younger, smarter, more patient. He's been operating in Japan, but word is he's coming to Seoul. For revenge. Tae-yoon's jaw tightened. Name? Park Jin-ho. He runs a smuggling operation out of Tokyo. Not as violent as his brother, but more strategic. He won't come at you directly. He'll wait, watch, find the perfect moment. How long do we have? Minji shrugged. Could be weeks. Could be months. Could be years. Jin-ho is known for playing the long game. Then we play a longer game. Tae-yoon stood, his decision made. We accelerate my exit. I hand over control within the month, not the year. We leave Seoul. Start fresh somewhere Jin-ho won't think to look. Sarah listened to this, her mind racing. Starting over meant leaving her art connections, her few friends, the life she'd built. But it also meant safety. A real chance at normalcy. Where would we go? She asked. Anywhere you want. Tae-yoon turned to her. I've got accounts set up around the world. Properties in countries with no extradition treaties. We can disappear completely if that's what it takes to keep you safe. What about your people? The organization? I'm installing my second-in-command, a man named Kang Dae-jung. He's loyal, capable, and has no interest in expansion or revenge. He'll keep things stable, keep the peace. Tae-yoon's expression was resolute. They'll be fine. And if they're not, that's no longer my problem. My only problem is keeping you alive and happy. They spent the next week preparing. Tae-yoon transferred power in a series of meetings that Sarah wasn't privy to. She focused on her own preparations, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. It was strange, packing up a life. Deciding which paintings mattered, which clothes she'd need, which memories to carry forward. Minji helped her, offering practical advice about traveling light and staying mobile. You're handling this well, Minji observed. Most civilians would be panicking. I panicked already. Sarah folded another shirt. Back when Jinwoo attacked. I used up my panic allowance for the year. Now I'm just focused on survival. The boss is lucky to have you. Minji's expression softened slightly. I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. He'd burn the world down for you. I know. Sarah smiled. That's why I love him. On their last night in Seoul, Tae-yoon took Sarah to the roof of their building. The city spread out below them, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. This is where I grew up, he said quietly. These streets, these buildings. This is all I've ever known. Are you going to miss it? Sarah asked. Probably. He turned to her, pulling her into his arms. But not as much as I'd miss you. You're my home now, Sarah. Wherever we go, as long as you're there, I'm home. They left Seoul at dawn. No fanfare, no goodbyes. Just Tae-yoon and Sarah, 2 suitcases, and enough cash and documents to start over anywhere in the world. They flew first to Singapore, then to Prague, then finally to a small coastal town in Portugal that barely appeared on maps. Tae-yoon had purchased a villa there years ago under a false name, a contingency plan he'd never thought he'd use. The villa was beautiful. White walls, terracotta roof, a garden that led down to a private beach. It was isolated, peaceful, the kind of place where you could forget the world existed. They spent their first week just existing. Walking on the beach, cooking simple meals, making love without the constant undercurrent of danger. Sarah set up a studio in one of the spare rooms and started painting again. Tae-yoon read books, learned to fish, slowly shed the layers of violence and control that had defined his life. 1 month became 2, then 3. Sarah's Portuguese improved. Tae-yoon grew a beard. They made friends with the locals, who knew them as Teo and Sarah, a wealthy couple seeking privacy. No one asked questions. No one cared about their past. It was the closest to normal Sarah had ever felt. But normal didn't last. It never did in their world. Sarah was at the market one afternoon, picking out vegetables for dinner when she noticed him. A man watching her from across the square. Asian features, expensive clothes that didn't fit the casual atmosphere of the town. He met her eyes and smiled. Not friendly. Knowing. Sarah's blood ran cold. She paid for her vegetables quickly and walked back to the villa, resisting the urge to run. Tae-yoon was in the garden, and the moment he saw her face, he knew. What happened? Someone was watching me. Sarah described the man. He knew who I was, Tae-yoon. I could see it in his eyes. Tae-yoon was already moving, pulling out a phone Sarah didn't know he had. He made a call, spoke rapid Korean, then hung up. Pack a bag. We're leaving in an hour. Just like that? Just like that. His expression was grim. If Jin-ho found us here, he knows about this place. We can't stay. But we were so careful. Not careful enough. Tae-yoon cupped her face. I'm sorry, Sarah. I thought we had more time. They were packed and gone within the hour, leaving the villa and their brief taste of normalcy behind. They drove to Lisbon, ditched the car, and caught a flight to Buenos Aires. From there they traveled to Cape Town, then to Auckland, always moving, always watching over their shoulders. It was exhausting. The constant vigilance, the inability to settle, the knowledge that someone was always hunting them. After 6 months of running, Sarah finally broke. They were in a hotel room in Bangkok and she just started crying. She couldn't stop. All the stress, all the fear, all the loss, it poured out of her in great heaving sobs. Tae-yoon held her, his own face twisted with guilt and anguish. "I can't do this anymore," Sarah said through her tears. "I can't keep running. I can't keep looking over my shoulder. I just want a life, Tae-yoon. A real life." "I know." He stroked her hair. "I know, and I'm so sorry. This is my fault. All of it. If you'd never met me, if I'd never met you, I'd probably be dead in that alley." Sarah pulled back to look at him. "Or still married to Marcus, miserable and small. You didn't ruin my life, Tae-yoon. You saved it. But we can't keep living like this. So we don't." His expression hardened with resolve. "We stop running. We end this once and for all." "How?" "We set a trap. We make Jinho come to us on our terms. And then I finish what his brother started." Sarah searched his face. "You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about eliminating a threat." Tae-yoon's voice was steady. "Jinho won't stop. Men like him, men like I used to be, we don't stop until we're dead or victorious. So I'm going to make sure he's the former, not the latter." It took 2 weeks to set up. Tae-yoon reached out to old contacts, let information leak about their location. Not Bangkok. A place of his choosing. An abandoned warehouse district in Manila that he'd used for operations years ago. Familiar territory. Controlled environment. Every advantage on their side. Sarah wanted to be part of the plan, but Tae-yoon refused. "This is where I draw the line," he said firmly. "You've been incredible, braver than I had any right to ask. But this is my world, my fight. Let me handle it. And if something happens to you, then Minji will get you somewhere safe." He'd called her in for this, his most trusted person. "She'll make sure you're taken care of, that you have access to everything you need. But nothing's going to happen to me, Sarah. I've survived this long by being smarter and more ruthless than my enemies. Jinho is about to learn that lesson the hard way." The night of the trap, Sarah waited in a safe house with Minji. The hours crawled by. Every sound made her jump. Every moment without word from Tae-yoon felt like an eternity. Finally, after what felt like years but was only 4 hours, her phone rang. "It's done." Tae-yoon's voice was steady. "Jinho won't be a problem anymore. Are you hurt?" "A few scratches. Nothing serious. I'm coming to you now." When he arrived, Sarah threw herself into his arms, not caring about the blood on his clothes or the exhaustion in his eyes. She just held him, grateful he was alive, grateful this nightmare was finally over. "It's really done?" she asked. "Really." Tae-yoon held her tight. "No more brothers, no more rivals, no more threats. I made sure of it. We can stop running now." They returned to Portugal, to their villa by the sea. This time, no one followed. No one watched. They were truly free. Sarah returned to her painting with renewed passion. Tae-yoon started a legitimate import business, using his skills for negotiation and logistics in legal ways. They adopted a dog, a scruffy mutt from the local shelter that Tae-yoon pretended to merely tolerate, but who slept on his side of the bed every night. 1 year after Jinho's death, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Tae-yoon over breakfast, her hands shaking as she showed him the test. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, his eyes filled with tears. "We're having a baby?" Sarah nodded, her own tears starting. "We're having a baby. Are you happy?" Tae-yoon stood, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "I've never been happier in my entire life." Their daughter was born on a spring morning, tiny and perfect with a head full of dark curls and eyes that would eventually turn the same warm brown as Sarah's. They named her Elena, after Tae-yoon's mother. And as Sarah held her daughter, watched Tae-yoon cradle this tiny life with hands that had once dealt death, she understood something fundamental. People could change. Not easily, not without cost, but genuinely. Tae-yoon had been the reaper, feared and ruthless. Now he was a father, gentle and devoted. He was both and neither. He was simply himself, complex and whole. 5 years passed. Elena grew into a bright, curious child who spoke 3 languages and had her father wrapped completely around her little finger. Sarah's art career flourished. Her pieces sold in galleries across Europe, each one a reflection of her journey from broken to whole. Tae-yoon's business expanded legitimately, his reputation now built on fair dealing and sharp negotiation rather than fear. They were happy. Genuinely, completely happy. They'd earned it through fire and blood and refused to let anyone take it from them. One evening, as they sat on their terrace watching Elena play in the garden, Sarah turned to Tae-yoon. "Do you ever regret it? Leaving that life behind?" "Not for a second." He pulled her close. "That life was empty, Sarah. It was power without purpose, control without meaning. This?" He gestured to Elena, to the garden, to the life they'd built. "This is everything. What about you? Do you regret saying yes that night? When I proposed?" Sarah thought back to that moment, to the choice she'd made to dive into his dangerous world, to all the pain and fear and chaos that had followed. And then she thought about everything they'd overcome, every challenge they'd faced together, every moment of joy they'd stolen from the darkness. "Never," she said firmly. "Not once. Not ever." Because here's the truth about Sarah and Tae-yoon's story. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and sometimes brutal. But it was real. It was 2 broken people finding each other and choosing to build something beautiful from their jagged pieces. It was a woman learning she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. It was a man discovering he could be more than his worst actions. It was love, not the sanitized storybook version, but the raw, fierce, complicated reality of 2 people deciding every single day to choose each other. Years later, when Elena was old enough to ask questions about how her parents met, they told her the truth. Maybe not all the details, but the essential story. "Mama was in trouble," Sarah would say. "And Papa saved her. Then Mama saved Papa right back," Tae-yoon would add with a smile. "Because that's what people who love each other do. They save each other." And that was the legacy they gave their daughter. Not money or power or fear, but the understanding that real strength came from choosing love even when it was dangerous, even when it was hard, even when it required changing everything you thought you knew about yourself. Marcus, wherever he was, never contacted them again. Sarah occasionally wondered what became of him, but never cared enough to find out. He was part of a past she'd long since made peace with. Vanessa was similarly irrelevant, a footnote in a story that had moved far beyond her petty cruelty. The villa in Portugal became their forever home. They never moved again, never ran again. They planted roots deep and refused to be uprooted. Elena eventually got a brother, a son they named Alexander, who had his father's intensity and his mother's artistic soul. And as their family grew, as their love deepened, Sarah and Tae-yoon never forgot the lessons they'd learned. That protection wasn't the same as possession. That love required trust as much as devotion. That sometimes the most romantic thing you could do was simply choose someone every day, in all their complicated, messy humanity. So if you're wondering whether this story has a happy ending, the answer is yes. But not because everything was perfect. Because 2 people decided that their love was worth fighting for, worth changing for, worth building a whole new life for. And in the end, that was enough. If you made it all the way to the end, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, do it. Because I've got more stories like this coming, and you don't want to miss them. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Did you love Sarah and Tae-yoon's journey? What was your favorite moment? And most importantly, would you make the same choices Sarah did? Would you dive into that dangerous world for love? Let me know. Share this video with someone who loves a good dark romance. And remember, real love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections fit with yours. Someone who sees all your darkness and chooses to stay anyway. That's the real magic. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, and never settle for anyone who makes you feel like you're anything less than extraordinary.